A few years ago, I ran an experiment in my office. I stopped responding to things, not everything, but just the things that felt urgent, but probably weren't, because I wanted to know how much of what I was doing every single day actually required me specifically. And when I found out, docs, that it was less than 30% of what I was doing, that number changed my entire business. So let me show you what I found. Today, I'm going to break down 3 things of why you probably feel really wired and over-functioning, and why it makes sense at first, but it's really doing you a disservice. What I found is that what I was doing to my team was hurting them, and the shift. And that one thing that does not require you to disappear, it just requires you to be strategic in where you show up. And by the end of this video, you're going to look at your calendar totally differently. And I have something for you at the very end that's going to make it very concrete for you. I'm Dr. Simone Ellis, retired dentist, freedom strategist, and someone who ran this exact pattern for years before I figured out what it was actually costing me. Doctors, the most expensive thing in your practice is not your equipment. It is the time that you are applying to problems that do not require you. And trust me, I get it, because a lot of us, it started with overfunctioning as good instinct. You are so invested in your business. And I think that that is a responsibility, that overachievement, that relentless excellence is going to bring us peace. It does the complete opposite, and it actually limits our practice's growth. Laura Vanderkam spent years studying how high performers use their time, and what she found was something that was so interesting that it should bother every practice owners in this audience. The first hours of your day are your highest leveraged hours. So that means that the decision quality goes down actually across the day, and our cognitive energy does not reload on demand. So what you do in those first 2 hours is going to set your entire trajectory. So my first question to you is, what are you doing in those first 2 hours? And if the answer is checking messages, getting on Instagram, answering questions from your front desk that they should really be handling, or making decisions that someone else could make, you are spending your most expensive mental resources on your least expensive problems. So here's the first thing I want you to implement this week. For 1 week, I want you to write down every single task you do personally and that you handle. Then I want you to run it through these 3 questions. Can it be automated? Can it be delegated? And does it require my specific expertise? When I ran my own schedule through this, I call it a CEO filter. Less than 30% of what I was doing required me. The other 70%, well, that was just out of habit. It was out of control. Because of course, to get to this level, we have to be some level of control freaks. And honestly, it was definitely a little bit of ego. And as doctors, I think we have to do a better job of looking inward, because this is the part where it was hardest for me to accept. When I was overfunctioning, my team was underfunctioning. And I had to realize it was because I didn't trust them. My team wasn't lazy, but they could feel that I didn't trust them. And I was communicating that in all of my actions. Every time I stepped in to solve a problem that they could handle, I was confirming that. I was reinforcing it. I was building a team of dependence, and that is not leadership. It was the complete opposite. Stay with me, guys. And this third piece is actually something that you can use, and I want to give you something specific for this week. The next thing that I noticed was this. Because I was so burned out and I was wanting to disappear from my practice, the reality was this. I did not realize that I needed to disappear. I just needed to have my presence count only in where it was irreplaceable. Where were the things that I could only do? That was patient care, right? I could only cut the tooth. I could only do clinical decisions. I could only create the vision and the culture. But everything else, well, that could be built with a system. Seriously, like someone else can send that email. Someone else can actually do some of the administrative tasks, but no one can cut teeth in my practice. I had to stop running away from the practice because I felt burnt out. Instead, I had to realize this one thing that I want my burnout doctors to hear. Build the system so only you show up for the parts that require you. And then I had to ask myself a harder question. Why didn't I trust my team? Was it because I was so uncomfortable with them failing? Was it a scarcity mindset, that this fear that if I let go, something would fall apart? Honestly, I think it was just a combination of both. And so when I asked that question and really sat with that honestly, I realized that documentation provided clarity, and that made me feel a lot more comfortable. And that clarity was what was going to allow me to trust. And for you, it might be how you communicate and how often. It might be the way that you set your expectations in the writing. But the real question to sit with is this. Are you holding back your team because your own insecurities about your practice? Micromanaging, guys, is never good for anyone, especially as an owner. If you want to invest your time into other things like building other ventures and actually a life outside of this practice, you cannot be everything to everyone. Your practice does not need a boss who does everything. They need a leader who that trusts their team to do their jobs. And honestly, you cannot give them trust while you're standing in their lane. So doctors, your practice does not need you less because you built something small. It needs you less because you're building something that works. The question is, as Mel Robbins says, are you going to let them? This resonates with you, subscribe so you don't miss the content of what's coming next. And if you want to see a practice that actually looks like run without you, my next video is exactly that. I left my office for 14 days. What happened? Go watch that next.